Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me again for the second part of our introduction to our initiative, our new initiative, the Benedictine CARE Wellness Program. In our first video, which I will link in the comment section below, but in that first part of the video, I really spent some time hopefully being clear in what we were observing within holistic health and how we thought at the Benedictine Center that we could bring a new approach into helping individuals making preventative healthcare changes. So again, thanks for joining me for part two. And this time I want to go more into what specifically that approach is and what does Benedictine care look like. Once again, I'm Terry Rose and I'm a licensed nutritionist based in Minneapolis. And I'm also a Benedictine Oblate with the Sisters of St. Benedict in Maplewood, Minnesota. So let's get started. In that first video, just to quickly recap, I went ahead and took us through what the current holistic health view is. As wonderful as it is that it's being considered, we looked at it and spoke about how it is being compartmentalized of body, mind, and spirit, with each of these becoming their own to-do of what we need to do to take care of body, what we need to do to take care of mind, and what we need to do to take care of spirit in order to get the result that we want. We talked about how this ends up creating a current health belief for individuals that if I control this first, if I can control all of these balls and all of these to-do lists, then I will finally connect to the source of sustained weight loss, better health, better relationships, energy and vitality, creativity, and finally feeling connected to the beloved, to the source of love, God, and our individual selves. So we talked about how unrealistic this was for individuals to be able to sustain successfully every day, every week, every month, every year. And that's the cycle that individuals are getting in with lifestyle changes, is that when they can't control all of that first, the balls all drop. We find ourselves in a position again of feeling uncomfortable, restricted, like I failed, and really wondering why any of it is even worth it. As we talked about, what this is leading to is individuals are in this situation of feeling like I need to do something better before I have the quality of life that I want. And this is where the Benedictine tradition is being brought into our program. So rather than looking at it as compartmentalized, Benedictine care is going to take the approach that the spirit is actually embracing the body and mind. And if we approach it from this perspective, how could that lead to a new way of looking at sustaining transformative change? So the goals of our preventative program is to evolve this current health belief. It is focused on a primary practice of turning towards and nurturing our personal relationship with the divine in the ordinariness of lifestyle choices. This is the foundation of Benedictine care. This is one of the important ways that it's unique from other programs. We are turning towards and bringing the divine relationship into the ordinariness of our lifestyle choices. A goal is also to use our Benedictine value of stability to nurture this relationship, to use our Benedictine value of stewardship to reframe self-care from obligation, something that I have to do to get something, to have a result that I want, to looking at it with more joy and contentment that it's stewardship for our bodies. And lastly, our goal is that we can apply the Benedictine value of community to individuals with this common intention, meeting them exactly where they are with no expectations, whether an individual participant is many months into the program or it's their first day. We want to be able to develop roots of stability in this community as we practice and experience this turning towards together. And the question that Benedictine CARE is bringing into preventative health isn't unique to Benedictine CARE. This isn't a question that we claim to have discovered or uncovered as needed on our own. This very question is the basis of all spiritual traditions. Our Benedictine spirituality is a 1500-year-old tradition that lays out a groundwork and for how to answer this very question. And it's what if nurturing and reconnecting to our spirit is really our truly only must do. And if we can reconnect with this spirit, a spirit that has never been anywhere, it's just our remembrance and our connection and our attention and our awareness of it is what has changed. But what if this is the source of our innate wisdom and healing and divine guidance that would give us the sustainability of the transformative behavioral changes that we're seeking? So this is our foundation for Benedictine CARE. All of Benedictine CARE comes down to turning towards, then acting. This is our primary practice that's introduced right away in CARE Chapter 1, Stability of Intention. Each chapter after that, there's 6 unique chapters in Benedictine CARE, and each chapter begins to elaborate on what that experience is when you really start doing this, when you really start turning towards before acting in the very ordinariness of making lifestyle choices. When we turn towards, when we pause in that space before choice, we enter into what I have termed in Benedictine CARE the sacred sliver of space before a choice. And this sacred sliver of space is where we can align what we want and the guidance that our innate wisdom can give us, where we can align that desire with the action that we actually take. All of Benedictine CARE comes down to how do we enlarge this sacred sliver of space before a choice. Each chapter elaborates on, builds on the experience of when we consistently start turning towards what do we hear? What is the experience? What discomfort do we encounter when we try to disrupt those established patterns of behavior? And all of Benedictine CARE comes down to listening with the ear of our hearts to the divine in the ordinariness of life. Each chapter brings an individual along, and we begin to experience this together in community. Our main characters introduced in Chapter 1, that as we turn towards and stand in the sacred sliver of space, the main characters that we are quickly introduced to is our lighter voice and our darker or shadow voices. This is really, these two are who we're really going to start looking at how they developed and how we can better align them so that our mind and our shadow voices can actually, rather than just ignoring them and resisting them and repressing them, we're going to explore what happens if we start integrating them. What if we start listening to them and have them be at service to our lighter voice? So right away in Chapter 1, our first introduction is just to start distinguishing between the lighter voice, which is also our inner wisdom and our true self, and those darker shadow voices, which we call in Chapter 1 our advocates or our bullies, and that's the false self from other contemplative terminology. So first in Chapter 1, we're going to become aware of this chatter. Then in Chapter 2, we're going to go into stability of voice. Once you start being able to distinguish between the lighter and the darker shadow voices, we're going to look at what do you really start hearing? What is that experience when you really consistently start turning towards? We're going to start understanding what's going on in your mind, and how do you start discerning those voices, and what do you do? How do you treat each of those voices when you hear them? In chapter 3, we're going to go into stability of heart. This is when we're going to start expanding. One of the primary ways that we can enlarge that sacred sliver of space is through contemplative practices and giving daily dedicated time to bonding with the divine. And that's what centering prayer and other contemplative practices. It is this dedicated time where you say you are an important relationship and I want to bond. It's our bonding time where we just listen. I just listen to you. In other forms of prayer and other forms of spiritual practices, there's beautiful ways of actually us speaking to the divine and speaking to God. In our contemplative practices, we're going to look at how can we start listening, using time to actually listen to the divine. And that's what we're going to explore in chapter 3. We're going to move from our mind into our heart of hearts. And then in chapter 4, we're going to bring this all together in stability of faith. We're going to start realizing that I'm bonding, I'm enlarging the sacred sliver of space, I'm turning towards more frequently during the day. But what if, as I start untangling, I start realizing that I'm not really trusting still that the divine really is there? What if I have a history with my spirituality that is not allowing me to feel trust taking those steps out on that tightrope? So we're going to look at that and we're going to validate that, and we're going to acknowledge that, of course, if we don't have trust, it's going to be hard for those advocates to say, okay, I will listen for guidance from the lighter voice, but until we establish trust, and that's what faith is, we're going to have a hard time doing that comfortably. So we're going to take a look at that together in chapter 4. And we're really going to bring it all together about how our contemplative practices and how this discernment is reconnecting our heart of hearts, our lighter voice, with our advocates, being at service to our lighter voice, using the tremendous faculties that are our mind and our body. We want to bring them all along, our physical, our mental, and our spiritual, into an integrated whole that we move forward with and that we bring forward to our community and to our relationships. That's where we're going. There are 6 chapters in the program. Chapter 5 is stability of hope, and chapter 6 is stability of love. And they start really taking us from, once we have that connection of mind to heart, we begin really opening and blossoming of what can happen from that space. Chapters 1 through 4 is really that layering and that untangling of how we've established patterns and what that experience is like when we try to disrupt them. So thank you for allowing me to introduce part 2 to you of what our approach is. In the next video, I'll do an overview of going into a little bit more detail on what those exact practices that we do use in Benedictine care for our contemplative practices, as well as lifestyle as medicine. So until then, I'll see you soon. Thank you.